The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for coming back to day two of our very, very awesome topic on connecting commerce, marketing, and service cloud. We spent yesterday talking about how you can go about connecting commerce and marketing cloud together. We spoke about some of the best practices, some of the use cases. We had some phenomenal questions, which was probably the best part of the session, in my opinion. Your questions are always really, really good, and that kind of increases the discussion. So thank you for that, and let's maintain the same cadence. So thank you again for coming out and spending the time with us. Um, Go ahead, Mihir, with the next slide. We just want to thank you once again for spending the next hour and a half with us. We promised you we'd give you a great time yesterday with a lot of information. We intend to do the exact same thing today. So thank you again so much. And our speakers for today, it's the return of our two rock stars, Abraham Lloyd, who is our Commerce Cloud expert and has been working on a lot of projects around integrating commerce, marketing, and service. And then, of course, Mihir, also, who is the expert on cross-cloud building cross-cloud solutions across the three clouds. So, Stefan Van Brockel, as we mentioned yesterday, your main point of contact in Europe. He runs alliances for us for marketing and commerce. So please reach out to him for all your enablement needs, for all your questions and ways of actually learning these three areas. And then again, my name is Sanjay Bansal. I'm the global lead for technical alliances, responsible for driving cross-cloud B2C enablement. You'll have probably seen this slide before. I'm going to go over it really quick. As mentioned, we intend to get you fired up about some really cool stuff that's happening behind the scenes, some of the best practices and all of that good stuff. There's going to be opportunities where we'll talk about some of the forward-looking things that are happening at the workshop back in HQ. We highly recommend that you get your customers excited, but please ask them to make decisions based on products that are in GA. And with all the formalities out of the way, Abraham, please take it away. Please make us smarter than we were yesterday. Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. We're very excited to present, so let's get started. We'd like to welcome you to day two of this webinar series. And when we think about the complete set of marketing, commerce, and service capabilities that Salesforce offers today, the spectrum of this feature set is pretty wide. So collectively, marketing, Salesforce, B2C commerce, and Service Cloud are becoming the foundation on which customers are growing and nurturing their relationship with their customers. So what we've heard from them is they want guidance on how to integrate these three clouds to provide seamless, consistent, and innovative experiences to their customers. The whole point of this webinar series is to provide you as partners that guidance so that you can have enabling conversations with your customers. So the past 2 days, we have two core topics. Yesterday, we covered the integration between B2C commerce and marketing. Today, we're going to cover the integration between B2C commerce and service. Okay, as part of this, we're going to do a deep dive into the architecture for the Service Cloud connector for B2C commerce, as well as discuss the use cases and some of the technical requirements and considerations involved with implementing it. So before we begin, though, I want to connect with everyone on why we're here and why trust matters. Trust is our #1 value at Salesforce, and how all of this relates back to connected commerce. So as partners, I think we've all seen this slide before, or at least a version of it before, right? So today, behind every device and interaction, we have a customer, and today, every customer is connected. They've got smartphones, fitness monitors, digital personal assistants, and all of these devices keep them connected and informed in different but interesting ways 24/7. And so these customers, because they're always connected and informed, expect their favorite brands to be just as smart and always on and as connected like they are. And so when we think about being connected, though, what does that really mean, right? Well, customers that are connected have two real core expectations. They want experience consistency and experience innovation. So when we think about consistency, what customers are saying is, give me the experiences that I value from our relationship in a manner that's consistent and predictable. You know, these experiences should behave the same way no matter where I am or what I invoke them on. Innovation's a little different though, because in innovation, customers are saying, hey, because I trust you, because we have a relationship, give me new experiences that improve my life or our relationship together. I want to be able to do things faster. I want you to be able to use what you know about me to improve our relationship and my life. Well, candidly, this is hard, right? It's complex. And it's complex for a couple of very real reasons. So first, commerce right now is more complex than it's ever been because we're now connecting more systems than ever before. When you think about the scale of systems, scale of customer data, the number of integration points being managed, it's larger than ever and it just continues to grow. So customers, though, now because they're connecting to us in more ways than ever before, every time they connect, they expect the experience, consistency, and innovation in those connections. And that expectation keeps growing with every device they add and every great experience that they enjoy. A great experience on one device raises the bar for all other devices and brand interactions. So collectively, managing these relationships as well as the systems that deliver these experiences makes handling commerce and delivering commerce difficult today. So what we'd like to do now is walk through a handful of findings from the State of the Connected Customer Report published by Salesforce in June. These findings highlight the expectations that customers have with the brands that they do business with, specifically in the areas of trust and commerce. So to start, 64% of customers in the survey believe that providing an excellent customer experience strengthens their loyalty. Similarly, 70% of consumers say that a service agent's awareness of sales interactions is very important to keeping their business. So customers want service agents to be able to leverage the data that exists about them in their service interactions. Hopefully you see a trend with the numbers going up. 80% of consumers also say that the experience a brand provides is as important as its product or services. And customer service is among the experiences that they measure regularly. So not only is it important to provide excellent e-commerce experiences, customers are now expecting the same kind of experience through service interactions. And so, and lastly, 95% of consumers say that they're more likely to be loyal to a company that they trust. So in order to win hearts and wallets, companies really must not only deliver great marketing, sales, and commerce interactions, they also have to be able to prove that they have the customer's best interests in mind. And so today we're going to talk through a lot of technical content, but when we try to anchor why we're here, in a world where customer service is now a core element of a differentiated customer experience, unifying commerce and service enables brands to use service interactions as opportunity to create trust and foster loyalty with their customers. Customers today expect empowered service reps, and they expect them to be armed with decision-making authority and a full understanding of their unique journeys. And unifying service and commerce enables this expectation. So what we hope to talk through today, actually, yeah, thank you, Mahir. Go ahead, let's continue. Okay, so one of the first questions we want to be able to answer is, what do we stand to benefit by integrating B2C commerce and service clouds? Well, to start, the integration enables customer and order data to be synchronized across both clouds, enabling views of this data from within Service Cloud. Additionally, storefront customers can now submit cases via the storefront and have those cases be created in Service Cloud. Agents that are working on customers can now place orders on their behalf from within Service Cloud as well and have this be launched from these cases. Lastly, and this is, I think, a big point to take home, we'll talk about this as we progress through the webinar. The Service Cloud connector allows for experiences to be customized through configuration as well as code. So what you can do is you can configure the data synchronization that exists between both clouds through configuration and build out new experiences that leverage the connector's data synchronization framework. So we're not constrained, and I mentioned this yesterday with the Marketing Cloud connector. It's certainly true for the Service Cloud connector as well. You're not constrained by the collection of use cases that are initially supported by this project. You can extend the existing set of use cases as well as implement new use cases following the data synchronization model that we have in place. So let's pivot now and walk through some of these details or some of these features in a little bit more detail. So let's start with a unified customer view. So the Service Cloud connector can, when it deploys, it includes two Lightning applications, a console and a CRM style application. Well, the customer view in these applications can be customized to include customer details, placed order, order history, as well as cases, and you can have this all live in one display. So let's talk about cases now. Cases can be submitted from the storefront and created in Service Cloud. When a case is created, the case is automatically associated to a corresponding person account representing the storefront customer that submitted the case. So the case model can also be extended to include order information as well as any other details specific to the storefront or that customer or the interaction or journey that they were on. So from within Service Cloud, we also have order capabilities that allow agents to view the order history for a customer, as well as the individual line item details of that order. Agents can also place orders on behalf of registered storefront customers, enabling purchase and upsell opportunities for agents during their customer interactions. And lastly, we have cross-cloud synchronization. So the Service Cloud connector includes a data adapter framework that can be used to synchronize customer and order data between the two clouds. As part of this framework, you have the ability to customize which fields are synchronized and enforced rules describing the synchronization flow. So as an example, if I want to pull an address for a customer in Service Cloud, I can configure that, but I don't want agents to be able to delete that address in B2C commerce. So I can configure the customer so that order data or address data always comes from Commerce Cloud. As Commerce Cloud customers change their address data, those changes always get pushed to Service Cloud. But if a service agent or a CSR is working with that customer data, any changes they make don't come back down to Commerce Cloud. And so we've talked about the use cases, we've talked about why we're here. Let's dive a little deeper now into the specifics of the Service Cloud connector. Well, so what is it? Well, the Service Cloud connector is a Salesforce Labs B2C commerce cartridge, and what it does, it facilitates the platform customizations necessary to enable the integration between Commerce and Service Cloud. So you should think of this not as a packaged product, but as an enablement framework to integrate the two clouds. So what should this do? It should accelerate time to market because we have patterns that have been tested and are currently being implemented by other customers. The integration is facilitated above the API via REST. So in Service Cloud, when you install the Service Cloud components, we expose a handful of REST services that Commerce Cloud uses to send information to Service Cloud. Similarly, Service Cloud leverages Commerce Cloud's Open Commerce API, affectionately known as OCAPI, to be able to do polls of data for orders and customers. So the type of synchronization that's enabled is real time. It's a peer-to-peer connection. And so be aware of that. As I stated, it's not a plug and play solution. So if you look to implement the Service Cloud connector, be aware that it absolutely requires configuration and storefront customizations as part of the implementation. Okay, within the storefront code base, one of the things that you have to do is you have to implement custom hooks that are included in the code base to be able to trigger the REST calls to announce things like a case creation or a customer registration or a customer update or an order placement. So as a Salesforce Labs Commerce cartridge, this isn't a productized solution and it's not eligible for Salesforce technical support. Please bear in mind, though, that using this doesn't discount your existing clouds from technical support. So if you contact technical support and say, hey, I'm having a problem with the connector, they're going to explain that the connector in and of itself isn't eligible. But if you're having a problem within one of your clouds, like for whatever reason, this service doesn't seem to be firing, or I'm not seeing these APIs behave as expected, those types of issues can absolutely be escalated to technical support. So if you want to deploy the Service Cloud Connector to core, previous versions were dependent on a managed or unmanaged package. What we've done with the latest model is change the deployment model so that you can deploy directly via Ant using Salesforce's Ant library. The source code to both the Service Cloud and the Commerce Cloud elements are available within GitHub and can be customized. So this is something that we absolutely encourage. We want to provide a little bit of guidance on customization, though, and say, remember, treat these customizations as net new development. This should be treated as any other type of software delivery project where you scope, collect requirements, have acceptance criteria, and use that to guide your development in the right direction. So let's talk now a little bit about qualification prerequisites. So the Service Cloud Connector has one very strong qualification prerequisite. Right now, the only customer model in Service Cloud that's supported is person accounts. We currently don't support accounts and contacts. We have a backlog item in the product team's backlog that currently works on the connector for this. But if you do not use person accounts, the Service Cloud Connector will not work for you based on the initial deployment. One of the things that you can do, though, because the source code is available, is you can look to, instead of leveraging person accounts, implement accounts and contacts. There's certainly guidance that we can provide there for you. One of the other dependencies that we want to be very clear about is that the Service Cloud Connector, as of today, does not support SFRA. So we're in the process of testing SFRA support. We expect to make an announcement about this in early Q1 of 2019. So if you're currently a Commerce Cloud partner implementing or doing an SFRA implementation, I definitely recommend to download and get the connector to be familiar with it. The elements that need to be implemented and validated on SFRA are implementation of the connector's custom hooks within SFRA's existing models and being able to overwrite them through a plugin. So that's support that is highly prioritized and on its way. As of right now, though, it's not available. All right, so let's do an overview and data flow walkthrough where we can provide some guidance and explanation of how some of these features work and how some of the data interactions occur between these two clouds. All right, so let's start here with order on behalf of. So you can see you have a Commerce Cloud storefront and then Service Cloud displayed. So the Service Cloud Connector facilitates order on behalf of by leveraging Commerce Cloud's and Service Cloud's REST APIs. We'll talk through some of the implementation considerations, but for order on behalf of, what we're doing is the CSR that's currently logged in, they must have a mapped account in Business Manager for the Commerce Cloud instance that's being integrated against. And then within that, you should have the agent permission or functional permission. If you have that, you can then authenticate via Okapi as an agent, identify the customer that you're ordering on behalf of, and then spin up a new session in a browser window that will then be logged in as a customer that was identified. So orders and cases are displayed within Service Cloud and presented to agents via a Lightning-enabled customer view. So we had talked about this. Lightning is very powerful in that you can customize these views as well, so that you can have a single view of your customer, all their cases, and all the orders that they've placed. The order cases and customer contact updates are synchronized through REST calls that go back and forth from Commerce Cloud to Service Cloud. So the way the synchronization occurs today is within Commerce Cloud, when a custom hook is invoked representing a customer transaction. So as an example, I register as a new customer, or I submit a case, or I place an order. That hook triggers a REST request to Service Cloud. And in that REST request is a payload identifying the header information for whatever object is being announced. So it may be a case or a customer, or it may be an order. What Service Cloud then does is it makes a subsequent call following this request, and it retrieves the data from Commerce Cloud for that specific object, and then pulls the data necessary to store that footprint in Service Cloud. So this is how the real-time or just-in-time synchronization works. In addition, Commerce Cloud has a job that runs in the background, which provides a fail-safe way of ensuring that both clouds are synchronized. Both records maintain a synchronization status, or both cloud records maintain a synchronization status. And in Commerce Cloud, what this job does is it looks for orphaned records whose synchronization status hasn't been updated. So if for whatever reason a REST request fails, that job will pick up that object, initiate the custom hook that was relative to the failure, and look to get that object synchronized. So let's walk through this one more time. Okay, so first we're going to start with the storefront, and the customer, let's say, initiates an action. In this case, they've initiated a case. So that case request goes to Service Cloud. Service Cloud goes ahead and creates the case. If there's customer information attached to that case, Service Cloud then makes a subsequent request to Commerce Cloud through the Open Commerce API to get that customer data so it can create a person account in Service Cloud and attach the case to that account. Similarly, the same type of process occurs when a customer registers or a customer updates their profile information. If I registered as a new user, or let's say updated my address or phone number within Commerce Cloud, a REST request goes to Service Cloud to announce that a change was made to that customer record. Service Cloud will then make an OCAPI request to retrieve the details of that customer, and then find the data that it's interested in and update that profile in Service Cloud. When an order is placed, the exact same kind of pattern occurs. The order header gets sent to Service Cloud from the storefront through a custom hook. And then within Service Cloud, an OCAPI request is made to retrieve that order data and then decorate the order object in Service Cloud with the header and primary key information of that order. That order is then associated to that person account. And then we have a job running in the background, which always runs to ensure that records in Commerce Cloud are synchronized. And if there are orphan records that have a failed synchronization status, this job will retry those records to help ensure that both clouds are synchronized with the same data. And so now, with all of this in place within Service Cloud, what you can do is you can launch and trigger order on behalf of scenarios. This, again, it's going to be dependent on a case existing, but in the order on behalf, what happens in Service Cloud is you instantiate the button. This will identify, based on the case, who the customer record is associated to that case. A REST request then goes to the OCAPI API in Commerce Cloud to create a new session for the CSR representing the customer. And then once that session's authenticated and the CSR is verified as having permissions to be able to create that session, the session information is returned in the response. And that CSR is now able to order and shop on behalf of that customer within the storefront. So let's walk through now some of the development requirements and considerations. What we're doing here is highlighting just some of the technical elements involved with both the Commerce Cloud and Service Cloud elements of the connector, so that you can be aware and hopefully familiarize yourself with these items. So first of all, on the Commerce Cloud side, this is all installed through an integration cartridge. So you should understand how to install a cartridge, add it to your cartridge path, and enable that within a given storefront environment. Because the Service Cloud connector leverages REST services that are called from within Commerce Cloud to your Service Cloud environment, you should know how to set up and configure REST services. The Service Cloud connector on the Service Cloud side makes use of very specific Okapi resources, so you should know how to provision those resources and troubleshoot and exercise them. And then on the Commerce Cloud side, we make use of custom hooks to instantiate the REST calls that go to Service Cloud when certain triggers are or transactions are completed. So as an example, submitting a case, creating a new customer, registering a customer, updating my profile, or placing an order. So you should be familiar with the Commerce Cloud hooks model and how to extend and read hooks. Additionally, we use a handful of custom objects to track things like the auth token that's generated by Service Cloud when we first attempt to communicate with the Service Cloud environment over REST. We also extend the service definition that we use, as well as the customer and order objects, to include new keys representing the order ID or the contact ID that exists in Service Cloud. So you should know how to leverage custom objects and extend system objects accordingly. And then lastly, on the Service Cloud side, or on the Commerce Cloud side, there is a scheduled job that we talked about. It's the asynchronous failsafe to ensure that if there are any, for whatever reason, just-in-time synchronizations that failed, this job can clean those up and look to re-trigger them. So you should know how to schedule and manage jobs in Commerce Cloud. One of the pieces of guidance that we strongly recommend is if you're looking to implement the Service Cloud connector, please connect with your customer or your partner manager and explain that you're taking on a project or an engagement where this will be used. Let them know so that they can support your goals. Within Cloud Practice, we have a group specifically designed to support these implementations. So letting them know creates a channel from your partner manager or the customer's CSM to us where we can work with you. All right, so let's talk a little bit now about the Service Cloud requirements. So if you're going to set this up in Service Cloud, you should have some idea of what Service Cloud user administration looks like, okay? We create a custom profile, and then we recommend that users get created. You're going to have to create a user for every CSR agent, basically, that's going to be working with these console apps. So familiarity with core and the core user model is essential. We use a connected app within Core to facilitate the integration and communicate with Commerce Cloud. So you should have some understanding of what that means and how that works. Because the Service Cloud connector can now be deployed using Ant, you should know how to use Ant. We use the Ant Salesforce library, and so we provide guidance in our documentation on how to extend the build properties file with the account username and the environment information describing where this gets deployed. That said, you should know how to get Ant, install Ant, and run Ant from a command line. We have a number of remote site configuration properties that need to be set up as well. You want to set up your Commerce Cloud environment as a trusted site. You want to be able to enable cores for that. And so knowing how to set up the remote site configuration in Core as part of setup is essential. In addition to that, in order to enable order on behalf of, agents in Service Cloud need to have a corresponding Commerce Cloud Business Manager user that has an agent functional permission. So what this means is that both clouds, depending on the number of CSRs you're going to have, need to have accounts mirroring each other so that you can then use those credentials when you're going to enable an order on behalf of environment or enable an order on behalf of transaction to authenticate. So the way this gets managed in Service Cloud is through named credential creation. And so understanding how that works is helpful, especially when you're looking to troubleshoot issues where order on behalf of possibly isn't working. And then lastly, we have page layout configuration. The page layouts that are initially deployed with Service Cloud Connector are candidly very vanilla. So service is a very personal and an intimate experience for brands. Typically, every company has a different workflow, different requirements. So we provide a little bit of UI guidance with the 2 Lightning applications that are included, but there is an expectation that you know how to customize layout within Service Cloud so that you can adjust these layouts based on what your specific needs are. And so one additional piece of guidance that we want to counsel on here is that please, it's important to remember, test the connector in a sandbox first. Please do not install this connector in production without first validating that it meets your needs in a sandbox environment. You should think of this more as an enablement framework or an accelerator for implementation than a fixed product. And so I think we're going to take a break. Stefan, do we have any questions?
Yes, sir, and thank you. That was a brilliant first half of this presentation. Hi guys, my name is Stefan. I'm going to be handling your questions for today like we did yesterday. Just a quick reminder for all of you to post your questions in the respective function in GoToWebinar, please, where we will be picking them up and then reading them out to these 2 fine gentlemen presenting on the call today. So let me just dive into some of the questions that we got. And here's a proposal easy one to start with, Abraham. Is there any timelines of when exactly we're going to have that Service Cloud connector becoming available for contacts and accounts rather than personal accounts?
No, unfortunately not. So this is so there's a new team that's been stood up within Salesforce specifically to manage and harden the Service Cloud Connector and the Marketing Cloud Connector. So we don't have visibility into the roadmap yet, but they're developing a point of view on this. Right now, their first priority is enabling SFRA support due to the number of customers that are interested in this that are also have SFRA implementations undergoing right now.
Right. Okay. Now here's another question for you. So I think this points a little bit into the direction of what kind of data exactly we are synchronizing. So we have obviously case management in Service Cloud, and cases that are being generated through the use of the cartridge and the connector. Is there anything that you could share where we could point out what exactly is being synchronized back from service to commerce, and whether there's going to be any ability to manage cases, like reviewing those cases, adding comments, stuff like that?
So right now, Commerce Cloud doesn't really have it. It doesn't have a notion of a case, right? So the way this feature was implemented is, think of extending your contact form or your contact customer service form in your storefront to, instead of generating an email, take the data from that form, decorate a REST request with it, and then send that data to Service Cloud as a representation of the case that's going to be created. So right. Once it's in Service Cloud, you can do all the things that Stefan just described as far as adding notes, creating tasks, escalating, changing ownership, but that data won't be available within Commerce Cloud. Now, one of the things that does come with the connector is a corresponding REST service for cases that allows you to specify a customer and then retrieve the collection of cases that are associated to that customer back. And extending this class to say, hey, I want the details for a specific case is very, very easy. So even though Commerce Cloud doesn't have this data, if you, for whatever reason, want to be able to display within Service Cloud, within Commerce Cloud, the data regarding a case, I think this is a great example of how you can extend the case implementation to enable that, so that after I log in as a registered user in Commerce Cloud, I can go to the My Cases tab, and then a REST request will fire that grabs the case data from Service Cloud and then wrap that in the UI accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Great. I got a few questions around SFRA and whether the connector is supporting SFRA in general. When we're talking, are we rather talking about pipelines, controllers? Are we talking about site genesis? Is there anything that we can do to make this a little more clear for the group? What is supported today and what not? Okay,
so so yes, all right. So right now, what the connector does is it leverages a number of custom hooks, or it exposes a number of custom hooks within Commerce Cloud that can then be inserted into strategic classes, things like the customer model, right, or the order model. You think about the method of creating an order. What you want to do, if you want to announce to Service Cloud that an order was created, you would call the app order created custom hook right after the order transaction was physically closed and you verified that the order was successfully created, to be able to inform Service Cloud in a just-in-time fashion that that order now exists. All right. All of the core features of the Service Cloud connector are supported by Commerce Cloud in general. All right. The one key element that we are developing right now for SFRA support is how to implement those calls following SFRA's extend or overwrite model. Right, so SFRA is a different code base. It's a different reference architecture. It has a different architectural point of view and follows slightly different rules in terms of how you extend or override existing classes. Okay, so we're implementing a plugin that basically sits on top of the connector that can be used to call those custom hooks within the SFRA classes. But the actual connector functionality, that is ubiquitous to any version of the Commerce Cloud platform. So if you're running on Site Genesis, it's certainly easy. If you're leveraging pipelines, I would have to look at how would you call these custom hooks from within a pipeline, but I would imagine this is actually pretty straightforward and solvable. And then on the SFRA side, we're like I said, the team is wrapping up development and testing the plugin model for the integration cartridge, so that way you can integrate with this following the best practices that we recommend for SFRA. So Stefan, if you could just those of you listening, if this please tell me if this clarifies the question that you're asking, okay? Because I'm happy to come back to it after we answer more questions.
Yeah, I think this is brilliant. This is really good. So this is clear to me.
Okay, great.
Here's one more, and this is a little more complex question, but it ties nicely to the things that we discussed yesterday. So I think yesterday we've seen an example where you would use the cartridge in order to trigger messages from commerce to marketing. Now, the question that I got here from Mark goes into a little bit into that space. So he was asking whether there is, or whether we can use that data, for example, if we connecting from commerce to service and we're synchronizing the Salesforce identifier for that person account, for example, or for that contact that sits behind that, are we able to pull that identifier, that Salesforce identifier, into Commerce Cloud to then use that in order to trigger, for example, or push that to marketing, so that we have that common identifier across all the three platforms once we have commerce, marketing, and Service Cloud in play?
So yes, and that's actually a best practice. So look, ideally, if you're in the middle of a net new implementation where customers standing up Service Cloud, Commerce Cloud, and Marketing Cloud, what you want to do is you want to basically have commerce and marketing agree to always use the Service Cloud ID as the identifier that communicates who a customer is to Marketing Cloud. So as part of the synchronization, what we do is we make the primary keys of the synchronizing cloud available on a given customer record. So within Commerce Cloud, you always have access to the Service Cloud ID for an order or a customer. Similarly, in Service Cloud, you always have access to the Commerce Cloud ID for an order and customer. So you should, with that synchronization, you absolutely can use the Service Cloud ID as the identifier of choice for a given customer when communicating with Marketing Cloud.
Right. Okay. Well, we've talked about connected app authentication a little bit yesterday, and about the cartridge. Today, you were talking about Okapi and what needs to be done in order to set up that connection and to leverage connected app authentication. I got a couple of questions that point into the direction of whether we are respecting contractual limits, like API limits, when we start synchronizing data between systems. Can you talk a little bit about how that actually works and whether there's anything that our partners have to watch out for in order to be able to respect those contractual API limits?
So we'll touch a little bit on this later in the use case slides, but on the Commerce Cloud side, there are no limits to API calls. All right, so API calls just come in baked into the platform. You can make whatever collection of Okapi calls you want to make relative to storefront traffic. It all gets treated but the same by B2C commerce. Within Service Cloud, depending on the addition of Salesforce that you have different governor limits for API calls that can be made over a 24-hour period. That said, the REST calls that are being made to Service Cloud and the API calls made within the Service Cloud connector absolutely count towards governor limits. So I feel like the guidance is be aware of what edition you have, be aware of what limits exist on that edition, and use the Salesforce reporting that's available to kind of understand how your limits are trending, and then try to compare that to the data volume or the synchronization data volume that you expect. So as an example, if I know that I'm creating 1,000 customers a day and I'm within 500 API calls of hitting my limit threshold, I should probably connect with my customer's Service Cloud AE to request an increase in governor limits.
Right. Okay, brilliant. Here's another question on while we're talking about the steps that you were describing, or the individual steps that you need to follow in order to do the setup. The question here is, why do we need a two-step sync process? For example, first sending a header from commerce to service, and then the Service Cloud calls Okapi to get the complete details. Why couldn't we do that, during the hook and do that all in just one go?
Well, I think. So candidly, this was just the architectural pattern that was selected. You could certainly do it in a hook in one go. I think part of the reason we're leveraging Okapi is that this is kind of a use case Okapi was designed for. What this also does, though, is it makes the initial REST request very, very clean. Right, what we're trying to do is reduce the customer-facing latency when these hooks are invoked, because typically they will be invoked through customer-facing transactions. So as an example, when I register, we definitely want that hook to fire, but we don't want the work that's being done in Service Cloud to have to hold up or wait for that to be completed before we resume the customer experience. Similarly, when I place an order, I want to tell Service Cloud immediately that the order was placed, but I don't need the customer experience to have to wait for that order to be digested by Service Cloud. So this decoupled pattern makes it easy to send over the header requests and then have the work that Service Cloud is doing be decoupled from that specific thread. And so it also leverages Okapi, and I feel like to some degree that simplifies some of the work that's done on the Commerce Cloud side, because now instead of having code to assemble all the Commerce Cloud data and send it in the payload, you're just setting the header, which makes this very, very lightweight. And then Service Cloud grabs the Okapi data, and all of that data is well structured, following the Okapi data model.
Right. Okay, last question for you guys, and maybe Sanjay, this is something for you as well. So I find this very interesting. So I'm just going to read this out to you. Do we have any success in using Force.com as a single identity provider that we could use to, for example, single sign-on into all of these individual solutions that we have outlined here today?
We have some customers that are exploring this. So with Core's identity, what you conceivably could do is single sign-on within Commerce Cloud, right? So example, you have community users that authenticate against Salesforce. They also want to have accounts within Commerce Cloud or authenticate against Commerce Cloud using their Salesforce credentials. So identity can be configured as an OAuth provider so that you can then leverage Commerce Cloud's OAuth authentication methods to connect to Core, authenticate as a user, and then create that user account or that externally authenticated representation of a customer. So we have customers that are exploring this. We're developing best practices around this now.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, guys. That's were the questions for the first half, and now back to you, Mihir.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Abraham. Thank you for the questions. Keep them coming. So what we're going to cover now is looking at some of the use cases of what Abraham walked through at a very high level, and some of the additional implementation considerations that you also need to take into account. So the first one that we're going to cover is order on behalf, and specifically within this, let's walk through kind of what the high-level overall workflow looks like, right? So from a customer's perspective, they contact the customer service with an order request, and let's just say, in this example, the CSR has done some work. They've looked through the customer email address. They've searched for that specific issue, and they find the case and the appropriate information from a console perspective. Once that is done, what you can do for the order on behalf of is you can actually start to look at what that information is from a CSR perspective. They can, using some of the calls that we talked about earlier, authenticate into Commerce Cloud using that agent's credentials. So they, when you set up the connector, you're going to set up the credentials between the integration user between for the CSR between Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud. And then what happens is, as part of that Lightning component, when you select it, it will launch the user interface. It takes the user ID of the actual consumer in this example, and then launches the storefront on Commerce Cloud to then drive the order on behalf of experience. Once that's set up, really the CSR in this example then actually starts to shop on behalf of that specific customer, because when they're launching that commerce session, they're launching it with that specific customer as the person launching the URL for Commerce Cloud. The CSR then places the order using the same customer information, payment information provided by the customer, and then once the order is placed, it just looks like as if the customer themselves placed the order itself. And then once the order is confirmed, that data then gets synchronized back into Service Cloud, and then the CSR can actually confirm that, yep, the order has been placed, and then you can now close the order on behalf of session. So that's the very high-level workflow. Oops. Lag. Okay. So let's walk through kind of the configuration pieces of what it means to configure this scenario. One, user permissions. Super important here. You have to make sure that all the CSRs are a Service Cloud user. So each agent must have its own Service Cloud user license, and all the CSRs are also Commerce Cloud users with very specific rights. In this case, the order on behalf of rights, and specifically within Commerce Cloud, it's the login on behalf and login agent, business manager, functional permissions. All right. The next piece is the CSR's accounts should also have the authentication settings for external systems defined in setup for Service Cloud. So when you go into your platform setup, Salesforce platform setup, this setting has to also be configured. And within this, you're actually configuring their username, password itself into for Commerce Cloud into the core platform. And then that's when you click or launch the commerce information, that's what it uses. So all of that stuff needs to be set up beforehand. The next piece then is actually setting up the cartridge. Abraham walked through some of the stuff. There's a GitHub repository that we can actually you'll have access to, that you can go and get all the steps from, and setting up that cartridge there. Then the third part is really setting up the Lightning components as part of the console. So depending on how you're setting up your console, really there's the order detail component that you can add to your console itself. You can add also the cancel order custom components to that service console. And as you're well aware, you can customize the look and feel of the console in Lightning, and then you would add those custom components directly within the console itself using the page layout changes. Now, one thing to keep an eye out on is the order on behalf is only available via the case object. So make sure that when you are adding this capability as part of your console, you have the case object information set up in your console, or they can go directly through the case and you add it to the case page itself. All right. The key piece here is the component is actually called the shopping cart component, and you will drag that shopping cart component to the page layout specifically for order on behalf of. Last but not least, and this is something that you should really look at, is ensure that when you go into custom settings in Salesforce setup, in the platform setup, that your address fields from Commerce Clouds are actually set up properly. So you want to make sure that you're mapping the Commerce Cloud billing, shipping, name fields to the object fields in Service Cloud, and this would be in the custom settings specifically within setup itself. All right. So now that you've kind of got the core configuration pieces done, things that you want to keep in mind. We actually covered some of these during the Q&A session, but I think it's important to just reiterate those. SFRA support, I think that was a question asked a few times. We are looking at supporting it. Safe Harbor, the current timeline is Q1 of 2019, so we're looking to push it out as soon as possible. From a version perspective, as you are looking at this stuff, it is version 1.5, so please make sure that that is the version of the connector you use when you are getting it from the GitHub repository. And then, as confirmed earlier, it is a site-gen architecture only today. The other item is, the customer itself, when you're doing order on behalf of specifically, must be a registered Commerce Cloud customer. And specifically, in order to actually use the order on behalf of capability, the actual customer ID must be the Commerce Cloud customer ID, because that is how it's set up. If you do not want to use that Commerce Cloud customer ID, and you have other external IDs that you're using, global ID or master ID through other systems, then you'll need to extend the cartridge a little bit more to be able to query and get the specific Commerce Cloud customer ID, and then go and launch the order on behalf capability. So please keep that in mind. Service Cloud must support personal accounts as it stands today. The official support is that contact support can be enabled through customizations. There is some stuff in there that you can look at to customize because it's open source. you have access to the entire source code base of the connector cartridge. You can customize it to add the standard account contact capability. Again, we're also looking at that support being done as part of the connectors, but it's part of the roadmap, and it's something that we're looking at adding pretty soon as well. But priority number one is to get the SFRA support in. Commerce Cloud passwords rotated every 90 days. So again, if you think about it from a CSR's perspective, your agents, customer agents in the field, they need to make sure that that password is in sync in Service Cloud. So within the external setup that we talked about earlier, you want to make sure that those passwords are synchronized. From a SSO perspective, for the CSR agents itself, when they're trying to integrate between the two clouds to pass on, order on behalf of, whatever the case may be, it has to be the Commerce Cloud username password. It's not the SSO password that you support. This is independent of the user or consumer behavior that we talked about earlier. Abraham, anything else to add here on these considerations from your perspective?
One thing I want to, I think we've been really clear about SFRA support and it being available ideally in early Q1 2019, #Safe Harbor. But one thing I want to do is invite everyone, all the partners that are currently in the middle of SFRA implementations and curious of about using the cartridge, is to, if you're a Commerce Cloud partner, download the cartridge, get some exposure to it. As I said, the underpinnings and core features and business logic of the cartridge, none of that is going to change with the SFRA implementation. The only thing the SFRA implementation will contain is a plugin that enables you to leverage the custom hooks in place. So if you want to understand what the cartridge is like, if you want to be able to scope what's it take to set up and install and extend, you're not dependent on those SFRA features to be able to explore that.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Mihir.
And just one other thing, just as you look at this slide right on your screen, some of these, when we get the content available to you guys, there's some of the key links associated here that you can also look at. Okay, custom fields in Commerce Cloud need to be mapped in Salesforce via the custom settings, right? So we've talked about kind of the order fields, those mappings need to be done in custom settings, and then the customer account field mappings itself also need to be done. So just make sure that those custom settings fields are set up appropriately and driven because that's what it's looking for. And specifically, I covered that few of the billing fields, billing shipping fields that need to be covered earlier. I think we briefly covered this in the Q&A. Each REST call that is made does count against the API governor limits that the Salesforce platform has. So you want to make sure that as you are looking at these, if you have really large number of orders per day or customers created per day, you may want to think about increasing those API limits and the governor limits. And obviously, the Salesforce account executives can help with that specific request. The Commerce Cloud data is stored in Salesforce and is driven by custom field mappings of the core object. So what this really means is, as you're doing all of this stuff, make sure you only map the fields you need the data for, right? The more data you bring in, potentially the more calls, the more, and obviously there's data storage things that you need to consider from a Salesforce platform perspective. So please keep that in mind. Ideally, you only want to bring in just enough information to bring the headers, and then ultimately, what you're really doing is doing the query as you, as Abraham mentioned earlier, to actually bring the order-specific detailed data into the UI for the console when the CSR is actually looking at it. Cool. So I think that covers the order on behalf of. And what's interesting, as we look into view order history and cancel order, the flow doesn't change that much in terms of the core capabilities. Just because of the way the connector is set up, you actually get all of these three capabilities through Lightning components readily through page layout, setup, etc. The experience obviously is a little bit different now, because what's really happening here this time is when the customer calls in and they want to, and the CSR wants to look up a specific order information, what they can do then is look at the same way approaching, like looking at the customer detail, looking through that person account information, searches for them. Once they search for it, what will happen then in this example is, as part of that Visualforce page or the Lightning component that is added to the console, the Service Cloud will look at the header, it will pass on that Okapi request to Commerce Cloud. It will look for that information, actually give you the order details, and then bring it back into Service Cloud. So we're not storing, as mentioned earlier, all the order details in Service Cloud. It is done as a live call during the services session going on with their customer to bring that order information into Service Cloud and be presented. So it is an API call that is done. The same way for cancellation, when the customer says, hey, I want to cancel my order, what Service Cloud does, as part of the cancel button that you get, the component is present as part of the page layouts that you can add. It will do a call to Okapi and it will initiate the cancel of the order. And then once that order is canceled, the B2C platform will update that, the Commerce platform will update that, and then on the refresh side of Service Cloud, you can actually see that the order is canceled. So you'll be able to see the updated status of the order being in cancel state once you refresh the screen. The actual configuration steps don't change that much. They're really, what's amazing is it knows exactly when I'm presenting, because this happened yesterday too. So I don't know what's going on. All right. So sorry. So really, it's really exactly pretty much the same pieces that I mentioned earlier. There isn't much of a change in terms of the view and order cancel itself. The same thing from a order on, the view and cancel orders. The configuration setup that we talked about don't change. They're pretty much the same. You need to be able to do this anyways before you get to typically the order on behalf of from an experience perspective. So you're going to take care of the same set of use cases there. Abraham, is there anything specific to Vue that you want to bring up? If not, I think we can move to questions.
Yeah, you know what? So at the risk of being dangerous, why don't we try a demo, a real quick demo of the order use cases? How's that sound?
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool. So let me, all right, so can you make me the, hold on, let me see. I want to make it be the presenter. I don't know, Stefan or Sanjay, if you have a, yeah. All right, so fantastic. Give me 1 second to get configured here. All right, and awesome. All right, so what you're seeing right now is my personal Service Cloud environment. Let me just, as a prerequisite, I'm gonna go ahead and purge all my data in the environment. And so to start, let's just do a very quick walkthrough of the Service Cloud Connector repository. So all the source code for the Service Cloud Connector is available from within GitHub. If you are a Commerce Cloud partner, you automatically have access to this as part of your Exchange access. If you don't have access, there is an automated way that we can provision this as well. All right. One, if you're familiar with previous versions of the Service Cloud Connector, you probably are aware or experience some gaps in documentation. One of the things that we tried to do with this version is completely refactor all of the documentation so that we're now including step-by-step, cloud-by-cloud guidance on how to set up and install the connector. So we provide an overview, we provide a little bit of guidance, and then here, just off the README, are links to the individual pieces of documentation. They're designed to be read from top to bottom, with each page, following page building on the preceding one. So we begin by talking through supported use cases. So you get very clear guidance on what use cases are supported and what the behaviors are per use case here. If I scroll down to the bottom, we also get an overview of unsupported use cases. So as an example, if you're going to modify a customer address, modifying the properties of a customer address in Service Cloud doesn't automatically change those properties for that address in Commerce Cloud. Now they can through the field mappings that Mihir mentioned in the use case review, but it's not a supported use case out of the box. Similarly, if I delete an address in Service Cloud, deleting that address in Service Cloud does not remove that address in Commerce Cloud. So, because Commerce Cloud is kind of the system of record for customers, at least from a commerce experience, it makes sense that you not be able to change that kind of data or data in that way. Similarly, so changing the status of an order from Service Cloud, you can cancel an order, but you can't advance the status of that order. One of the things that you can do is through customization of the order object. If you wanted to make changes and then integrate with your order management system instead of Commerce Cloud to grab status, you can do that. But here's another example of a use case that, at least initially out of the box, isn't supported. So if I go back to the connector documentation, the one thing I want to highlight here is setting up Service Cloud. So the posture we had when we authored this version of the documentation is that Commerce Cloud developers may not have a lot of experience with Service Cloud. All right, so what we tried to do here was provide very, very pointed step-by-step guidance explaining what the prerequisites are, why do you need person accounts. We include links that kind of speak to all the person account prerequisites, what they are within Salesforce Core and why they're necessary and how you can set them up. We have the pre-installation configuration that says, hey, what are the things that you should do? Hold on one second. Yeah. All right. And then, so this speaks to creating the profile as well as creating the integration user. We walk through how to deploy the Service Cloud connector code base via Apache Ant and what's involved with setting that up. So we provide guidance on how to customize the build properties file so that you can actually deploy this through Ant and what you should see. Here's the command to execute. And then once that's done, there's a post-installation script that needs to be executed. We provide guidance on how to do that by launching the Salesforce Developer Console. So if you're not familiar with Service Cloud, but you have an interest in the connector, this guidance is very, it's detailed enough that you should be able to walk through the process of implementing this in Service Cloud, provided that you just have a fundamental knowledge of Service Cloud and how to configure it. All right, so I strongly recommend reviewing the documentation. Like I said, we spent a lot of time on it. It's very detailed, very step-by-step driven. The experience that we've heard from the field and the customers and architects that have tested the installation is that they can get Service Cloud up, the Service Cloud connector up and running in roughly 1 business day. Hashtag safe harbor. So hopefully that gives you some confidence, though, about the investment necessary to be able to test this and explore it shouldn't be very significant. All right, so let's pivot now to one of my favorite things about what we've included here. And included in the code base is a Postman test suite, okay? So given that all the interactions that occur between these two clouds occur over REST, it's important to be able to validate those handoffs and the communication between the two clouds outside of the specific clouds, right? So if you're going to debug this in Service Cloud or debug this in Commerce Cloud, you're looking through log files, you're having to, possibly debug code or step through code or create breakpoints in Commerce Cloud through debugging or set up checkpoints in Service Cloud, so that way you can inspect what scope variables existed and what their values were during a specific execution. So what we've done here is created 3 top-level folders that speak to the different levels or the different types of communication that can occur. So under Service Cloud requests, we have all the Service Cloud REST requests that the connector uses. So you could see here the get and post methods. They're all labeled like get case for account, get customer details, get order details. We also have all the Commerce Cloud Okapi requests that are invoked from both the Shop API and the Data API. So you could use this in some way as documentation to say, okay, what's actually being called and how is it being leveraged? Now, one of the things that we did to make this implementation easier is we use the environment templates that exist within Postman so we can parameterize all of these values. So what you can do now, as an example, so here is my consumer key for my Service Cloud environment. You can set up different templates that speak to, let's say, a QA environment or a staging environment or a sandbox or another team member sandbox, and very easily switch from one environment to another to execute these requests. So when we first finished with Mihir's presentation, we talked about wanting to demo the order scenarios. What I'm going to do is expand the cross-cloud use case directory, and in here, what we have are use case representation of the request cycles and what actually happens from one cloud to another. So as an example, I'm going to go to order processing, and in this use case, create an order for a registered customer. So this is a great example of what the handoffs and nature of the communication actually looks like between these two clouds. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to retrieve a Service Cloud auth token. I also need to retrieve a Commerce Cloud auth token, so that way I can make my Okapi call. As part of this test, I want to verify that the customer order is registered, right? I want to say, hey, this order that I'm using, does it physically exist in Commerce Cloud? And then if it does, what I'm going to do now is call the order placement service in Service Cloud to tell Service Cloud, hey, this order exists, go ahead and create it. So I'm going to pivot back to Service Cloud, and what I want to do is just show, hey, there's nothing up my sleeve. If I refresh this for all orders, there's no items. What I'm going to do now in Postman is kick off the Postman test runner. I'm going to go to the test suite, cross-cloud use cases, go to order processing, and I'm going to say create order for a registered customer. I'm going to pick my environment. I'm going to just drop a little bit of a delay there, and I'm going to say run create order. And so now what you see in Postman is it executed the auth token request for Service Cloud, executed the auth token request for Commerce Cloud. It's verifying that the B2C commerce order is registered, and then it created the registered customer order as well. All right. So after it did that, you could see all the verify tests that occurred. So it verified that the order was found in Service Cloud. It verified that the order numbers matched. It verified that the totals matched, that the customer was created as well. There's a registered customer attached to this order. So what Service Cloud did is it said, oh, I should create a person account for this order. It verified that the account was mapped to the order's email address and that the Commerce Cloud ID is mapped to the registered order's ID as well. So now, if I pivot here, and I reload, now we see that the order exists. And what I can do now is I can drill into the order. And what you see now this view is a little curated. So this isn't the view that gets shipped with the Service Cloud connector, but hopefully it gives you some insight into what you can have this look like. I've got 3 tabs here. The first is details, which show some very, very high level details of the order. Okay, the second is the line items, and what this does is it shows me the actual line items for the order that was placed. So here you could see the confirmation status, shipping status, export status, and order status. You can also see the individual line items. Now this data is not stored in Service Cloud. What we're doing here is actually making an Okapi request to get the line item status data for the order via Okapi and then rendering this via a Visualforce component. So be aware of that. We also have this Lightning component here where we can pull the order details. This gives us a very, very high level overview of the order details based on what's in Commerce Cloud. I also have a sync button that if I press, what you'll see is that the order status just got synced. If I pivot to Commerce Cloud for this order, you would see that the status is open. And so now we talked about wanting to cancel the order. All right, so let me pivot to Commerce Cloud first. Bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna actually, let me go to Service Cloud. So the order number I'm interested in is 601. So let me go paste that and hit find. There we go, it found my order. So now, if I look at the order status, you can see that the order status is set to open. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cancel the order. It says order has been successfully canceled. If I sync again, You'll see the order status is now moved to canceled. And now if I reload this order in Commerce Cloud, you'll see that the order status has been moved to canceled. So so this is those three use cases that Mihir talked about. You get to view the order initially gets created, and then you can also cancel the order. You could see that working here. And hopefully with the discussions that we've had today, you now have an understanding of what the data movements are. If you're interested in playing with this some more, again, I strongly recommend downloading the cartridge and the code base from GitHub, because one of the things that does come with this is the Service Cloud Connector Test Suite, and this gives you something immediately actionable to the point that if we go to the documentation, there's a section in the documentation called Validate the Environments. And what this does is it actually provides guidance on how to set up the Postman Test Suite and the environment template. So here we have links to the template and the test suite. And it gives you guidance on how to download and set it up. And then it gives you guidance on the individual environment variables that need to be configured. So what I advise to customers when they're looking to implement this, immediately when the implementation's done, you should configure the test suite and just run through these tests, because they will tell you very specifically what may not be working. And so, all right, look, I hope this demo was helpful. And Stefan, I guess we want to check. Do we have any more questions?
Brilliant. Thank you, Abraham and Mihir. This was awesome. I do have some questions for you, so let me just quickly read them out to you here. But before we do that, Sanjay, do we want to switch back to a deck, or are we done with the slides here? Gentlemen, Mihir, is anyone?
I think
we're done with the slides.
Sorry.
We're good? Okay. All right. So the first question is, I think this is more like his question on orders and how we treat historical orders. So do we have any like information stored in any system like Service Cloud once it's collected, that an order that was placed on behalf of an agent, who that was actually, and how that order has been placed to generate that 360-degree view of customer interactions? Are we getting this data together in both systems, and how much of that data is actually available?
So when an order is placed on behalf of a customer in Commerce Cloud, I believe that there is some metadata that decorates the order to say this was placed via an agent on behalf of this customer, so that it's differentiated from orders that customer natively places. So as of right now, we're not transferring that data to Commerce Cloud. So when the order is placed, it's going to look like an order for that user. But this is something that could easily be done by extending the order object and then using the order field mappings to bring that metadata over. So I'd probably have to look into this to be able to provide more guidance, but I think using the guidance I provided, that's a vehicle for exploring how to customize to facilitate that specific use case.
Right. If we have historic orders in the OMS, in the order management system, is there anything, or are there orders that we actually, or how much of the history are we actually synchronizing to Service Cloud then?
Well, so that's really dependent on I think on a customer by customer basis. So what we see from some customers is that, hey, we do have the ability and we want to synchronize a certain amount of legacy data and have that available within Service Cloud. But then other customers sometimes say, no, you know what, it's okay from this point on, this is all I care about. So what you can do, and actually this is a very important distinction to make, if you're going to look to synchronize data, there are other facilities within Salesforce that are better at performing this bulk ingestion than using the point-to-point Service Cloud connector. So Salesforce has bulk APIs that you could use to ingest order data. You can export order and customer data from Service Cloud, from Commerce Cloud, and then transform it into a format that the bulk API supports to be able to ingest large amounts of customers. We don't recommend using the connector to facilitate that type of ingestion. Okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I guess a question for both you, Abraham, and me here, and that really ties back to something that I asked earlier in the first half, but also ties in nicely to the webinar that we were hosting yesterday on commerce to marketing. So just general guidelines, if we have all the three systems in place, so if we're connecting commerce to marketing and then commerce to service, are we recommending to establish Marketing Cloud Connect between marketing and service in order to get that triangle going between the three systems to drive we have transactional messaging, for example, we have order management. Is there any other use cases that you can think of that make that triangle a necessity?
I mean, in general, to integrate the Marketing Cloud and Service Cloud, or in this case using Marketing Cloud Connect, I think is important, because then you can also bring in the appropriate data back and forth from a Marketing Cloud perspective, right? So if you've got email engagement data, or you want to have some of that data available too within Salesforce Service Cloud, then you can do that if you set up Marketing Cloud Connect. So I think the idea here is that as you think through the overall point-to-point connections between the different clouds here, so yeah, the recommendation is use commerce to marketing for for kind of engaging the customer, commerce to service to bring the customer, purchase history, etc., into Service Cloud. So you can use Service Cloud as a way to then provide that one customer view, and then Marketing Cloud to Service Cloud to also bring in the ability to essentially engage via service if you needed to, and then also bring in the customer engagement information directly into Service Cloud. So ultimately, you're creating that one customer view within your Service Console for that agent.
Right. This question came up multiple times. What do we do with email messages that would be sent out as part of a service case? Is that supposed to be sent through Marketing Cloud, or are we going to use the internal the SMTP functionality that sits within Service Cloud? Is there any guidance that you can give?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Abraham.
No, Mihir, why don't you go ahead?
All right, I'll take a stab and then you can add to it.
Yep.
Essentially, the recommendation is, if you've got Marketing Cloud and you've set up Marketing Cloud, the recommendation is to use Marketing Cloud as a way to send that email out. Because I would imagine that connection has been already set up, and then you're just essentially triggering the appropriate email using Marketing Cloud Connect.
Right. Okay. Abraham, anything you want to add?
No, I think that sounds great.
Perfect. Okay. Another question that I got a couple of times, can you guys just talk a little bit about the average time that is required in order to connect service and commerce from your experience? Is there any guidance that you can give our partners?
Well, I think just setting up the vanilla connector is something you could expect done in a day or two, right? Provided you meet all the prerequisites, you have the skills, you have some understanding of how setup in core works. But I think the one piece of guidance I would add is most customers are not going to be satisfied with the vanilla versions of the use cases currently supported by the connector. Okay, so what this does is it provides a foundation that you can then develop and extend on. So it's important to really understand the use cases that customers want, so that you can install the connector, do a little bit of exploration, identify what customizations need to be made, scope them out, and then plan your timeline appropriately. Okay, it's important that when you're looking to implement this, just like when you're looking to implement the Marketing Cloud Connector, you should look to scope these as individual projects and drive that scoping exercise based on the specific use cases that customers want and the details around or behind those use cases.
Right. Okay. So is there, so I got a question that I think relates a little bit to the Connect product that Salesforce is offering today. For example, between marketing and sales service, we have Marketing Cloud Connect as a featured product. Are we looking towards, is there anything that you can share in the direction of whether we're going to have such a productized package version or like a built-in connector in the future that is going to feature all of what you guys have been presenting here today?
Mihir, do you wanna take this?
Sorry, I didn't fully understand the question. Can you repeat that again, Stefan?
I think this is a little bit about today we're using cartridges. Is there going to be a kind of a productized Salesforce version of that connector, like Marketing Cloud connector?
Right.
Are we looking towards something like that in the future?
Got it. Yeah. So as it stands today, if you saw last or the Dreamforce that just passed, we announced the product called Customer 360, and that is essentially what the future is in terms of how we're going to be looking at integrating the Salesforce clouds. So as again mentioned at Dreamforce, the availability of Customer 360 is going to be in the later half of 2019. And what we're looking at doing is really using Customer 360, and there's to do a couple of things. One is thinking about it from the perspective of a customer resolution engine. So how do you actually bring in data across the many different customers that one may have from an email perspective, let's say for marketing, or there may be another user for commerce or one for service. Bringing all of those user personalities or personas into that one global ID. So it's going to take care of that piece. That can then be used across all the different clouds. So Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, and our core Salesforce Service Cloud, Sales Cloud, etc. And then on top of that, we're going to have the two add-ons, so to speak, that will integrate Commerce Cloud and Marketing Cloud, and then Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud. And that in itself will enable you, our customers in the long run, to take care of replacing the connectors with that specific capabilities of Customer 360. So that is the current roadmap plan of what is it that Salesforce is working on for that productized offering.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Mihir. We have more questions, but being conscious of time, I would like to wrap this up here. So thank you for those of you who have sent in questions, and thank you, Mihir and Abraham, for an awesome presentation. And with that, passing back to you, Sanjay.
Oh, well, thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Mihir and Abraham. Thank you for the presentation. A lot of good, deep insight. I think for everybody out in the audience, I'm sure this is a nice teaser in terms of some of the things we've gone over. How do we connect the three? What I would humbly request y'all is if y'all can think of other areas where y'all are seeing a need to know a little bit more, to have a little bit more information to make your life easier as you're working with customers. Feel free to reach out to us, s.bunsal@salesforce.com, and Stefan will also send out his email address. Would love to hear some of the other topics that y'all are interested in. These are some of the topics we thought which would be of great value. And this is not a one and done thing. We're going to be doing a lot more of these as we collect more information from y'all and as we, survey the market internally to see what else we could be enabling our SIs on. You'll be receiving a survey. Would deeply, deeply appreciate it if you could send some love to Mihir and to Abraham. Also, please give us some, constructive feedback in terms of what we can do better. So please fill out the feedback form. Stefan will be sending out an email with that. You will also get another email next week, hopefully in the middle of the week, maybe towards the end, where we'll send you information of where you can find the recording and also the slide deck. Most probably they'll be in a PDF format. So you'll have both of those. Once again, cannot thank each and every one of y'all for spending the last 2 days with us. Hopefully it was of great value to y'all. And thank you once again, Mihir and Abraham. Thank you so much.
No, it's our pleasure. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.